Hey friends, I got a tripod for my camera and a holder for my phone, so I can now do it in this setup. I also got myself an external SSD drive so that I can store these much larger files directly on that and work off them rather than tax my aging laptop even more. So hopefully that should be easier workflow improvement. So I'd like to talk a little bit about positive intelligence and the opportunity there for self-coaching. So positive intelligence is a course or program developed by a guy called Shirzad Chamine. His background is he was a CEO, I think, of and chairman of the Coaches Training Institute, Corrective Training Institute, formerly known as the Coaches Training Institute, which is the coaching program I went on. So actually, here's my certificate, 104 hours of coach training. I'm really a big fan of CTI and the corrective model. Because I think it just captures a whole bunch of aspects of personal development, of coaching, of the entire framework that really resonated with me, and I think is really valuable when providing coaching and when entering into that kind of relationship. And a lot of the tools that are inside it are really quite powerful. So positive intelligence is based on, well, I shouldn't say that really. Positive intelligence is clearly influenced by coactive. But what Shirzad's done and his team is take it a bit further into a certain direction around the idea of saboteurs and our inner sage, and really a kind of an implementation of that's really effective, and something I think could be adapted into other contexts, particularly using stuff like Rome and journaling style, introspection and kind of contemplative practice almost. So I'll give a quick summary of what positive intelligence is about, and then maybe a little bit about how it could be adapted for kind of other applications, if you like. So the way it works is that you take a test to identify your top 10, well, there are 10 saboteurs, and you kind of rank them in order of which ones most show up for you. So for me, my top saboteurs are the restless, and the avoider, and the hyperachiever. So those are my top three. So what that means is that the restless distracts you from discomfort. So, I don't like this, let me go and do that, let me go and do that. There must be something else I can go and do. What if this kind of slightly seemingly ADHD style affect, where you're constantly looking for something, maybe the next thing will give you what you want. The avoider is kind of, as it sounds, I don't want to engage with this thing. My life will be better if I don't do this thing. I'll avoid pain if I just don't engage with this difficult thing. And it kind of lies to you, and it tells you that that's true, even though it's not. So you can imagine that the combination of the avoider and the restless together is interesting, because what happens is, for me, is that there's something will come up, I want to avoid the pain of engaging with it, and the restless will enable that by sending me off to go, oh, just check Twitter, check this, just do that, go start this, whatever. The hyperachiever similarly is the need to perform at a high level, fear of being judged badly for performing badly, and just kind of slight perfectionist traits. So again, those top three for me kind of manifest themselves in a sense of, oh, I haven't done a good job on this project. I'm worried about having the conversation with my manager because they'll judge me because I haven't done a very good job. So that's the hyperachiever and the avoider. I'll distract myself from that pain by doing a kind of endless cycle of other things, perhaps lower importance, kind of pleasant distractions. Now, that's cool. And all of the saboteurs I've just described are called accomplice saboteurs. And there's one master saboteur, which Shirzad calls the judge. And the judge always activates the other saboteurs. So in this example, the judge says something is bad, or says that I am bad, or something along these lines, and then the other saboteurs come along and kind of chime in as to how to manage the badness. So in my example there, I didn't do a good job, I'm bad, is the judge, and then the rest chime in. Now, what Shirzad is kind of saying is that whenever we feel bad for more than a couple of seconds, that's because we are being hijacked by the saboteurs, by the judge predominantly. He likens it to the idea that when you touch a hot stove or something hot, feeling pain for a couple of seconds is normal and healthy. It kind of tells you to take your hand away, but then that should stop at that point. If you then choose to keep your hand there, you'll keep feeling pain, but you're not listening to the signal being given to you. And the saboteurs and any kind of negative emotion linked to them, Shirzad says, is caused by not heeding the information that we're being given, that we should change something, or that we're being tricked into leaving our hand on the stove, essentially. So I like this model because I think I agree with that conception that we have these different voices in our heads that have competing interests, they have competing motivations. I know that I just saw Tiago on Twitter read a book a while ago and saying that's all nonsense. I haven't read it yet, but I'm intrigued to kind of check that out. But from my own experience, at least, the way I subjectively experience this is that there feels like there's some truth in that. So whether or not it's actually true, the fact that it seems to be true is still useful to some extent, because I can still engage with it in a way that I can do something, I see results, and it works. That implies that there's at least some level of truth in what I'm experiencing there. So the way that Shirzad suggests that you manage these saboteurs is to first of all recognize them, and then to activate what he calls your sage mind. So we all have saboteurs and a sage, and the sage only feels positive emotions, really. It's the innovative, curious thing that takes action. It sees the good in things, all that kind of thing. It's kind of the inner child before it's told off, if you like. And the course is about how do you move from the saboteur mode into the sage mode. And there's an 8-week program which I went through. There's also a book, but the program's really good because it takes you through week by week these concepts, but it also gives you a framework to train these things as well. So there's an app, and throughout the weeks you work with different elements to train yourself to get better at spotting the saboteurs, identifying them, and then shifting out of them. So the way that works is, let's say, judge voice, I'm not very good at making YouTube videos. This is all pointless, this sucks, I should just not do this because I don't want to experience the pain. Okay, so that's the judge and maybe the avoider, the hyperachiever, and there are others as well. So what you do in positive intelligence is you note, the judge thinks I'm not very good at making videos. Rather than I think I'm not very good at making videos, the judge thinks this. There's a bit of separation there, away from identification with the saboteur and seeing it as something separate, which actually links in quite nicely to a lot of mindfulness traditions. It's kind of, there is suffering, there is happiness, there is whatever. So that separation is valuable, and you become the observer a little bit. The next step is to ground in something to do with the present moment. And a lot of the course is around different kinds of mindfulness exercise. He doesn't call this, he calls them positive intelligence quotient reps. It's kind of PQ reps, as if kind of likening it to a gym almost. So you do reps in the mindfulness gym and train your mindfulness muscles. He's got his own jargon around this, but it's fundamentally that. So for example, in that case, I would go, okay, my judge thinks I suck at making videos. Let's do 10 seconds, bad place to put my hand is the microphone. Let's do 10 seconds of rubbing 2 fingers together so closely that I can feel the ridges on both fingers. So my attention goes closely into my hands. What this kind of does is it suppresses the sabotaging voice, kind of pushes it out with the present moment. And this is intriguing to me because it's very similar in some ways to Alexander technique of, you kind of go off somewhere in your head and then you come back to the present moment in its entirety. And what Shirzad's doing is often focusing down on something, but he also does expansive stuff as well, which is something I want to explore some more. So that's the fundamentals of positive intelligence. There's way more. I want to kind of dig into this in a lot of detail at some point. This is not that video. This is kind of just ad-libbing. What I've been doing, which I think is quite cool, is logging what the saboteurs think. Now, this is not part of positive intelligence. So for that, you just kind of, you notice in your mind, oh, the judge thinks X, do 10 seconds of mindfulness, carry on with your day, and that's it. Since I'm at my computer so much, and Roam is just open, what I've done is I always write down and kind of tag each saboteur, the judge, the avoider, the restless, whatever, and write down from their perspective what they think. So, 2 square brackets, the judge thinks I suck at making videos. When I keep doing this is kind of following your heartbeat for 10 seconds. I'm not going to put my hand on the microphone again. That's the main one that I do. And that's cool. So each time you write down the judge thinks X, you get this belief out of your head. You see it quite clearly. And what I like about this is you have a record over time. And this is where Roam gets really powerful, because you can then click through onto the judge's page and see all the times over the last however long, daily references and projects and whatever, that the judge has said stuff. And you can start to see patterns, and you can start to see what kind of circumstances the saboteurs come up, which ones come up when, that kind of thing. So I think there's real potential here to take this model and apply it in a kind of more journaling-based context, interstitial journaling basis. You can still do all of the mindfulness stuff, and I would still do that stuff. In fact, I'd like to develop a Roam-based self-coaching program at some point, or at least put some videos out there on this, where Roam takes you into a kind of self-coaching mindset or framework. So you'd have instructions in various places, kind of choose your own adventure, click here, and then there's more instructions and all that kind of thing. Particularly, actually, I must talk about this now. The idea of changing perspective within Roam, I think, is really cool. So let's say I want the sage perspective. What I can do is when I get the sabotaging voice saying, well, the judge thinks I suck at making videos, I can do my mindfulness exercise for 10 seconds to kind of just weaken that judge voice. But I can also tag the sage perspective as a hashtag. And then if I want to, either then or a bit later on, I can go to the page, sage perspective, and see all the references where I've asked the sage for help. Now, what's cool about this is that I'd love to be able to kind of have a separate CSS styling, or you can even do it manually when you have that perspective, where it feels like you are the sage, and you can have the top of the page saying, well, here's a ritual, here's a 10-minute, 5-minute ritual with breathing exercises or mindfulness exercises, some journaling, whatever, to shift your mindset into the sage, this innovative, creative, resourceful, what in coactive would be called naturally resourceful, creative and whole, or the inner leader, one of these things, and really embody that, and then answer yourself, kind of address the saboteurs, saying, well, okay, how about you do this? How about you try this? Have you considered this? But it's all coming from you. So as long as there's enough of a framework and structure in Roam or a similar platform to allow for this, and there's some kind of guidance around, well, this is how positive intelligence works, or whatever else that you might need, you suddenly have a really powerful self-coaching tool. You can layer that in with a coach as well, who knows the program or who knows if you want to share certain things with, but fundamentally it's under your control. So I think that's really cool, and something I'd like to explore in more detail at some point. In terms of next steps for that, I think what I'd like to do is reread the PQ, the Positive Intelligence book, in some detail, write a book review. I've not really seen anyone talking about this. It's a little bit niche, I think, and still quite early. It's mostly, I think, currently used by coaches going through the program. So I got access because a friend of mine is a coach, and she's one of the believers, early members, whatever. And I went through the program with her as my coach at a discount, well, actually for free. So that was very nice of her. So I think it's not that well known yet, but there's something really cool in it. More broadly, what I'd like to explore is there's a whole bunch of different journaling, reflective, coaching, self-development tools. And I think I'd like to figure out how to integrate them with Roam, as I just described, in a way that you can build a system that helps you grow just by using it, and doesn't require any third-party apps, doesn't require any download my template and then fill it in. I'd kind of be like, here are the fundamentals. Let's together build a system that works for you based on which components of different frameworks are most relevant to your needs, and then just build that from scratch for yourself based on that. I'm not at all a fan of, like, you get these Notion templates where you're like, yeah, I've clicked a button, so much value here, and I've got kind of like this enormous set of tables and linked databases and whatever, and then you just never use it because it's not yours. So in Roam, I'd like to do that where you build it yourself with instructions, but kind of a co-created thing with someone. I can imagine a course around this, or just a series of videos, as a kind of like, hey, just try this kind of model. But I think there's really something in this and something I'd like to explore. So that's it for this one. I'm now going to see how well this recorded. So thanks.